Hey guys, it's Chase with Sherpa Equipment Company. Today we're going to be installing our Storm Mark II rack on this 2021 Ford F-150. This Storm rack is built for the Supercrew F-150. It will not work with the Super Cab or the single cab. So right off the bat, we're going to go ahead and break down what you are going to receive in a package from us. You're going to have your 7 crossbars, you're going to have your 2 side plates, your wind fairing, your 4 mounting feet, and all of your hardware. In this hardware, you're going to want to make sure you have your small silicone packet, as well as your rivets and your billet rivet feet. So on this rack, it is a drill rack, meaning you will be potentially pulling headliner as well as drilling holes into the roof of your truck. It is a pretty in-depth install. We highly recommend taking it to a shop, paying somebody to do it if you don't want to do it yourself or feel comfortable doing it. You can find a list of certified dealers and installers on our website to see if there's one in your area to help with that install. If you do decide to take on the install, we're going to help you out through the process here. And right off the bat, we can say it's going to be a little bit different than previous installs that we've done. We're going to be building the rack on this table over here before doing anything up on the truck. So we'll go ahead and get into that, and I'll walk you through it. So the first step of the installation process is going to be actually building the rack on a separate table off of the truck. So to do this, I'm going to grab 2 crossbars, set them over on our table, spaced semi-far apart, and then we're going to go over the slots on your side plate. You're going to have 2 slots that are designated for the 2 crossbars we just pulled, which are going to have your mounting feet on it. It's going to be the short slot right behind the fairing slot, and then your other short slot right over the mountains. So we're going to have a buddy step in. He's going to hold the side plate. I'm going to pull some hardware. We're just going to get it started with 4 socket buttons, 4 of our inch-long socket buttons with our 1/4-inch washers. And we're just going to start by threading the side plate into the crossbars. We're going to keep this loose for right now. We'll be adjusting the fitment later and tightening it down in a later step. Again, we're just getting these started. We're going to adjust in the slot later, but for now we're just going to get it started and all assembled. Okay, so now that the crossbars are both attached to our side plates loosely, we're going to go ahead and center the crossbar in the slot. This doesn't have to be perfect, but you're going to want to get it as close as you can to center. This is just going to make sure we're square when we go up on the roof. It can always be adjusted later on, but we're going to be measuring off of this. So we're going to want to get it as close as we can. Once we've got that there, you'll tighten those down, and we'll do the same on the back one. Again, we are going to just center up the crossbar in the slot to as close as we can get to center, somewhere around there, and tighten these down. Again, it does not have to be perfect yet. This is just for the initial measuring, and we'll get it up on the truck here shortly, and that'll help with that step. Okay, so now this is a very important step. We're going to be setting up our mounting feet to go onto our crossbars. We're going to be doing that before we put them over there. So we're going to take our 2 contoured mounts. These gutter mounts are going to be with the front mounting feet. Our 2 flat gutter mounts are going to be with the rear mounting feet. We're going to take our M8 hardware and M8 washers. You should have 8 of each. And we're going to start attaching our mounting feet to the gutter mounts. Again, rear with flat and front with contoured. So we'll get these all started. We're going to be attaching these just with our fingers right now. We're going to go finger tight. These will be coming off in a later step during the install, so you don't want to go crank down on them with a wrench or anything yet. It'll save you some time and headache later. But you're going to want to make sure they're finger tight. They don't have any play in them. Again, double check, triple check that your flat is with your rear and vice versa. So once we get the mounting feet attached to our rivet mounts, we'll set them aside. The next step is these are going to just go right onto the crossbars that we have already pre-assembled on our rack over on the table. And we'll do the fronts, same way, finger tight, contoured with front. Okay, so our mounting feet are attached to our gutter mounts. We're going to grab our hardware that's going to be used to mount our mounting feet to the crossbars. It's going to be 8 T-nuts, 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 of our 1/4 20 hex bolts with their 1/4-inch washers. And we are gonna grab all that. If you have extra hardware, don't panic, that's completely normal. We throw a lot of washers in extra, tend to get lost or dropped on the shop floor. I'm gonna give you a couple extras just in case that happens. We'll take our hardware, we'll take our mounting feet, and we'll head over to the rack that's on the table here. We'll lay our mounts out. So now that we got our mounting feet laid out, I'll just dump our hardware. And we're gonna wanna make sure of a couple of important things here. Our front feet go on the front crossbar, that's the first one. Second is the front slot, the front notch in the, on the mount, when it's flipped over, is facing the front of the rack. This is important, this is gonna show how the mount needs to sit on the roof. And we'll get our T-nuts installed first, and then we'll get the mounts on. When dropping your T-nuts in, you don't have to put them in any orientation as long as the bottom side faces down, or the rounded side, sorry, faces down and the flat side faces up. Doesn't matter if the wide side is right or left. Will not matter at all. We'll take our 1/4-20 bolts and get those started. Once I have those finger tight, I'll back them off one turn, and I'm just gonna slide these both out to the edge. This is gonna help later when we're getting the rack up on the roof. And we'll put the rears on next. Again, the rears are also side specific, so you're gonna wanna note that notch in the bottom of the mount. You're gonna wanna make sure that faces the front side of the rack. So I'll grab 2 of my bolts and washers and drop the T-nuts into the slots. Grab my mounting foot, making sure the notch is facing forward. It is, so I know this goes here. Get both of these started into the T-nut. Slide it to the outside, and I'm just going to tighten down with my fingers one more time. And now we'll do the same thing on the other side. So now that all of the mounting feet are attached to the crossbars and they are all finger tight, slid all the way to the outside, we're going to call Cameron back in again, and we're going to flip this rack over and get it put up on the roof. Obviously, during this step, you're going to want to be very careful with the paint. You can always add another crossbar in here if you don't want to reach as far across to grab both crossbars. I find that just makes it a little bit heavier, and it's already as awkward enough as it is. So going up, you're going to want to make sure you don't put the rack into the side of the truck, obviously. You want to be very careful, and then drop it down to your friend on the other side. While he holds his side, or while I hold my side, I guess, he's going to get his mounting feet into the roof track. And once his mounting feet are both somewhere in the roof track, not on the pane of the roof, I'll do the same on my side. We're just going to get it on so we can worry about not damaging the paint. And once we get these ones lined up, go ahead and drop that down, and then we'll start centering from there. So this is right where we sat the rack down. Just first looks, I can tell that the rack's sitting too far back and definitely too far over to the passenger side. That's all good and well. We're going to adjust for that now. So what I'm going to do right now is just, while it's sitting here, kind of shimmy the rack up, get it a little bit closer to where it needs to sit. Again, I'm making sure that all of our mounting feet and the rivet mounts or the gutter mounts are sitting in the center of the track on the roof. And now I'm going to start my process of walking around the vehicle, making sure the spline of the rack matches the curve of the roof. I'm probably going to end up throwing the fairing up there to help measure side to side. It's always nice to have a center point on the rack, and our fairings, you can measure it off of the center bolts. And yeah, we'll just start that process and start marking some holes. So we are going to put the fairing up on the truck. It will help with the centering. So I'm just going to set these other crossbars to the side now. I'm going to have to keep this table clear because the rack is going to be coming back off the truck. I'm going to clear some of this hardware out of the way, and we'll go ahead and do the fairing. So to install the fairing, it's pretty straightforward. What I like to do is lay the fairing out with the crossbar directly behind it, and then using a little imaginary line, I like to make a line from the holes in the fairing to the crossbar. That's where I'm going to insert our T-nuts. We're going to have 6 T-nuts. I only have 5 here for some reason, so I'm going to find another one, and we'll continue on. Okay, found another T-nut, so that's our 6th T-nut. Going to line those all up, and now that those are all lined up, set the fairing on top of the crossbar. This is where we're going to take our short socket buttons with their 1/4-inch washers. I like to start in the middle, slide the fairing over the crossbar till you can find your T-nuts below, and then just get those started with your fingers, and then work side to side. Gonna have to probably slide the crossbar or the fairing a little bit on the crossbar to expose the T-nuts below. But once you have all 6 in, we'll go ahead and center it up and tighten it down. So all of my bolts are started. We're gonna center the fairing on the crossbar. I like to have a hand on either end, and then just feel the edge of the crossbar and the edge of the fairing. Once I'm happy and those are both flush, take my Allen and tighten those down. There's no need to go over tighten on these. So Cameron's still hanging out over here, so I'm gonna give him 2 of our socket buttons with the 1/4" washers. I'm gonna take 2 myself, and we're gonna throw this up on the rack. Again, very important step to be careful on, so you're not dropping the fairing on the roof of the truck. And I'm gonna let Cameron go ahead and get his bolts started first. I'm just gonna hold mine in place, and he'll get his started with just finger tight, and I'll do the same. So I'm just getting it started. The fitment of the fairing right now is not important. We're just using it simply for a center measuring point. So I'm just gonna make sure it's off the roof just so we're not damaging the paint, and just tighten one of my socket buttons down. Give this to Cameron, he can do the same. And yeah, we're just gonna use this to measure, and we'll keep going. All right, so the rack's on. We're gonna now adjust forward and back and side to side. Everybody kind of has their own preferences of how to do this, but I just kind of like to walk around the vehicle. I have a couple spots that I like to measure off of, or visually measure off of. I like to see where the windshield kind of meets that gutter up on the top, and I kind of use that as a point of reference on both sides and kind of walk back and forth. And then also this truck conveniently has a dash cam located dead center in the windshield, so I'm going to line that up as close as I can with the center bolts and the fairing. As far as going front to back, if you had followed the instructions up to this point, you should have your crossbars in the middle of the slot, meaning the whole rack can be adjusted forward and backwards as needed. But again, I'm just going to follow this bottom spline of the rack, and I'm going to try to match it and make it look as nice as I can with the to match the curve of the roof. So the back is a little bit awkward. It's hard to find kind of a dead center on the back of the truck, especially with this truck. We have a rooftop 10 on it. But we're gonna either do some measuring or just eyeballing, because at the end of the day, the drill racks takes a little bit of both. It's hard to measure because the roof tracks are slightly contoured and angled and do weird things, so you don't want to go strictly off measurement. You really want to trust your eyes and find a good spot where you're happy with it. You're going to be happy looking at it, and commit. So we're going to start moving and adjusting on that, and we'll get back with you here when we do. Okay, so I figured a spot that I like the rack. I like the fitment forward to back. I also like it side to side. But it is important to note this is not the end-all be-all position of the rack, because you still have the adjustability in the slots because we're still centered, and then you always have your side-to-side adjustability once the rack's bolted down to your roof. So as long as you're pretty much satisfied with where it's sitting at this point in the process, you're good to move on and start marking your holes. To do that, some people like to use a center punch. I have this little chisel thing, little trim remover that I like to use. It gets me a little bit longer of a punch reach. Some people like to use a marker. Whatever works for you is a way to go. So we're gonna hop up top, and we're gonna mark some of these holes. So the holes that we're gonna be marking are the holes on either side of the gutter mount. It's important to note before you mark any holes, you want that gutter mount to be sitting as close to the center of the roof track as possible. This gives you a little bit more wiggle room. You're not gonna run into anything awkward as far as getting into your paint, and you're just gonna have the best fit all around. So once we're satisfied with how the gutter mount's sitting in the track, we're gonna go ahead and mark the center of that hole as close as we can, and we'll get going from there. So one thing to note on these F-150s is they use a kind of a hard foam up here. So it's not right to metal, unfortunately, which gets a little bit interesting sometimes. But we've seen all kinds of shapes and angles and weird things that they can throw at us up in these roof tracks. So you might have to, your roof might differ a little bit than this, but they're all gonna be the same concept. They're all gonna have that hard foam. The only real difference is you're gonna have to drill through the foam before you get to the actual metal. But You want to make sure your mounts are also sitting as flat as they can on that foam. Once you start drilling, you're going to be drilling through that foam, through the metal, and then once you start riveting down, it'll suck that whole mount down to the roof. So now that all of our holes are marked, I've double checked them. Want to make sure there's no confusion there when you take the rack off, because we're going to be taking this whole rack off. You're going to want to make sure there's no other weird holes up there that you can get confused and end up drilling the wrong spot. So I got Cameron up on the other side of the truck, and we're going to just take this rack off. We're going to slide this one back onto this tent. This is an employee's truck, so he already said he doesn't mind, but you're just going to want to get it out of the way onto a safe spot, and we'll just pick it up and move it on out. So now that the rack is out of the way, I'm going to take my center punch and I'm going to go around to all of those holes now that I had already marked and punch them out. I want to make sure that the drill bit doesn't walk at all. So I'm really going to punch these things, make sure I'm not getting any kind of sideways movement, because we only get one shot to drill these holes. Once I've done that on all 4 of the mounting positions, I'll take those gutter mounts off and we'll get them drilled to the roof. So what I'm doing now is just center punching these holes. If you use the center punch right off the bat, you can do it again if you feel like it. If you don't, probably no need. However, I like to make sure these holes really have a nice center punch going. I've drilled enough of these at this point to know that the drill bits like to walk. This material is real slick, and when they do start walking, it turns into a little bit of an uncomfortable install. So I'm going to center punch these out till I know that they have a nice hole down there to get my drill bit on, and I'm going to do this on all 8 spots on the roof. Now we're going to do the same thing on this side. Just punch them until you feel comfortable getting the drill out. All right, so this is the fun part of the install. We are now to the point where we're going to be drilling the roof. If you have not disconnected your battery yet, we highly recommend doing that. That way, in worst case scenario, you get through an airbag, you're not going to be setting those off on you and surprising yourself. So the battery is disconnected. Also, if you want to pull your headliner, another good time to do it. If you want to just feel up there, make sure you're clear of your curtain airbags. This truck we've seen before, we know the roof of it. On the F-150s, a lot of them have a small pocket between the roof and it's almost like a secondary roof in there. So we know there's a lot of free room. No issues going to be had while drilling. So I'm going to use a 3/16 step bit. These bits work great. Don't really need a pilot hole with it. If you don't have one of these, I recommend starting small and stepping up a few times until you get to your 3/16 size. But yeah, this is your final chance to measure. Go check out all your holes, make sure they're all center punched correctly, and let's start drilling. One other super important thing to mention. If you have drill stops, I highly recommend using them. If you don't have them, I highly recommend getting them. They can be bought for under $10 on Amazon. They work great, and they pretty much ensure that you don't go plunging that drill bit too far into your roof, causing damage. So we're going to grab our 3/16 drill stop and tighten it down, and then we'll be good to drill. All right, so drill stop's on. We've got our 3/16 step bit. And now it's time to drill. Like to throw on some safety glasses. This rubber sometimes can go flying, get a little crazy. But once you got it ready, start drilling. It's important to not push too hard. That way when that roof does give way, you're not going through all the way to the airbags. And the F-150s have a really nice roof. They drill out real easily. Want to make sure you're on target. That one walked a little bit, but we'll go back to where it needs to be. We're going to do the same thing on this side. So one of our bits, it looks like it walked a tiny bit. So I stopped real quick. I'm just going to double check that we're still in the right spot. What I did is I pulled our corresponding gutter mount off of the mounting foot, and now I'm putting it up matching our back hole to our front hole should be. And after looking at it, it looks like everything should be fine. I'm going to give it a couple more center punches just to be sure. This way we can kind of ensure that when we do go back and drill that hole and make sure it doesn't walk again, that it is going to be in the right spot. It didn't actually walk, so we should be good to continue drilling. All right, so now all 8 holes are drilled up on the roof. I'm going to take my rivet, or one of my rivets, and just go around. I'm going to check each hole, just make sure they fit, they bottom all the way out. You want to make sure on this on each hole, just so you don't go all the way to the next step before realizing one of your holes isn't drilled out far enough. Once you've confirmed that they all fit and they all bottom out, we're going to go ahead and remove the gutter mount from our mounting feet. Remember, we only had tightened those by hand, so those should come off pretty easily. And we're going to get those riveted to the mount, or to the roof, before we attach the mounts back to them. So we'll go ahead, remove those from our mounting feet wherever your rack is, and get those up on the roof. All right, so our gutter mounts are back off the truck, or off the rack. And this is going to be the most important time to make sure you have your flats together and that you have your contours together. Contours, this is the final time that they're going to be installed on the roof in their most permanent state. So we're going to grab our 8 rivets, our 2 flats, and our 2 contours, and our small bottle of silicone, and a rivet gun, and head up onto the roof. So we got the roof gutter all cleaned out. We don't want to have any kind of gunk or any metal shavings, rubber shavings, whatever under there. And I'm going to grab one of my contoured gutter mounts, line it up with the freshly drilled holes, confirm that everything fits. When I've confirmed that, which it does here, then pop that back out and lay our silicone down. Okay, when applying the silicone, I like to put a dab right in the center of the hole and then just go slowly, work my way outside the hole. Just get that full coverage. We don't want any kind of water getting in here. And it doesn't take a lot, but you want to make sure you get that full coverage. Once that silicone's on there, I like to have my rivets already installed in the mounts, and that helps you line it up when you go down to the roof again. Once those are in, flat to the roof, take your rivet tool and get those things buttoned in. So we got our front riveted in. Now we're going to make sure we have our flat rivet mount on the back. Take some more silicone and repeat the same process. Again, no need to go crazy on the silicone. Just want to make sure you get that good seal. Make sure to cap that up between spots, because that stuff gets everywhere. Squeezing it down to your roof, and then rivet it in. Okay, so our gutter mounts are riveted to the roof now and siliconed. So we have Karen back here once again to help us bring the rack back onto the truck. We have our M8 hardware up on the roof ready to go, 4 bolts on each side along with the washers. We're going to do it pretty much the same as we did when we put it up the initial time. He's going to get his sides kind of started, and then that's when I'll adjust my mounts and get mine started as well. And then we'll go through the centering process once again and get this thing dialed in. All of our M8 bolts are started. Nothing's tight yet. We're going to go ahead and tighten those now. 13 millimeter socket with an extension should do it. I'll probably have to grab a wrench too. But we're just going to tighten the mounting foot into the gutter mount. That way we can start our final adjusting side to side and tighten that down and finish this thing up. As you'll see here how that kind of just did, this will kind of just suck all of our mounts up into the correct sitting position as they should, which will make everything sit a little bit higher and be ready for final adjustment. All right, so now that the mounting feet are tightened down to the gutter mounts, we're going to work on the final squaring up of the rack on the roof. I'm going to use a method that I've liked to do recently where I measure the crossbar. I know this one's 56 inches. I'll take a tape measure and make a small mark halfway down the length of the crossbar, so around 28 inches. I'm going to use a white paint pen. This does come off with acetone, so I'll do that as my final step on the rack install. I have a little white mark halfway down the crossbar, and I'm going to get this installed in that rear slot on the side plates, or on the rack. And we'll use the center of the back of the tail light, or the center light, to line it up with this mark on the crossbar. That'll show our squareness on the back. And then we'll do the same thing that we did earlier by looking at the wind fairing against the camera and then the two side plates, how they sit on the windows, to make sure our rack's as square as possible. And we'll start tightening those mounts down to those crossbars. So you can see the white mark that I made halfway between the distance of the crossbar. And I just went to the back and lined it up off this camera, which is located dead center of the truck. That kind of gave me my centering method for the back of the rack. We're going to leave this crossbar here. We'll wipe that white mark off with acetone later, but we'll move up to the front now and make sure that side, or the front's centered. And once I confirm that the front is mostly centered as well, we can tighten it down from the mounting feet up into the crossbars. And honestly, it looks just about perfect as it is. So we'll get those mounting feet tightened down and adjust the fairing. Okay, so now that I'm happy with where the rack's sitting on the truck, I'm gonna take my 7/16 ratcheting wrench, head up to the top and tighten down those 8 hex head bolts that are going up from the bottom of the mounting foot to the crossbar. It's really easy to over tighten these bolts. So once you feel that T-nut inside of the crossbar kind of starting to bite, that's all you need to go. No need to go crazy and snap a bolt or put yourself in a weird spot. So once those are tight there, move on to the back. Tighten these the same way. And we'll do the same on the other side. Okay, so now that the crossbars are tightened down to the mounting feet, we have Scott up here. He's going to help us put our remaining 3 crossbars in. So we're going to take our remaining hardware and our Allen wrenches and head up there. And the final step after that will be adjusting the fairing, and then this rack is done. We like to set up our crossbars as evenly spaced as we can pull off on top of the truck, but you can set them up in whatever orientation you need. If you have extra crossbars for different loads, feel free to set them up any way you need. We just like to set them up even when they leave the shop here. So Scott's over there right now. We got all the crossbars up. He's tightening down his side first. It's a good idea to just do that. It'll square up your crossbars on the other side. That way you're not working with any kind of weird forces trying to bow the side plates out. Once he's got his side completely tight, we can start tightening this side. And just go through while you're up here, double check all of your hardware and make sure everything's good. All right, so the final step, we're gonna adjust the fairing to sit the proper distance off the roof. All of our trucks, we like to have about 1/4 inch off of the roof. That we find creates the least noise and works the best for our applications. So once you get about 1/4 inch off the whole way across, go ahead and tighten these 2 fairing bolts down. And once you got these all tightened up, I think we can say our rack's done. Okay, so the rack install is complete. Everything's been tightened down. It's a good idea after driving it around for a few weeks, a few 100 miles, go back through, check all the hardware. You wanna make sure that's all tight. If it is, you should be good. It's not a bad idea if you go on a big trip or something, go back through, double check it. We do understand this is a very in-depth install. If you have any issues whatsoever during the install, please do not hesitate to reach out, ask questions, give me a call, shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. We can also help recommend shops if you're looking to have somebody do it for you. That's also a very good option. We also do them in-house here as well. So other than that though, the rack looks great on the truck. This is again for the 2021 Supercrew. There's going to be more fitment details as we find out more about what trucks have the same roofs, what sunroof combinations and everything like that works as these trucks keep coming out. So keep up to date on that. Check that out on the website. We'll be sure to update that as we go. Other than that, if you have any more questions, let me know. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.